Hello there and welcome back to War Thunder. Today I want to make a tank review on the Challenger 1, and this is the highest battle rating British tank with a battle rating of 9.3, so it currently has the same battle rating as, for example, the M1 Abrams and also the T-64B. Now the Challenger 1 is the, middle point, or the reason why so many people are, talking about with furious anger and are having a hot discussion, and sometimes they overshoot with the truth and the arguments about this kind of okayish tank. It's not bad, it's not overpowered, it has some big weak spots, it has some big weaknesses, but it also has some strong things going for it. But at the end of the day, the tank fits the meta of War Thunder better than a Chieftain Mk, to which it is in the most aspects a definite upgrade. So I think when it comes to if the tank is enjoyable to play, it could be worse, but the stock grind is really what's holding it back, much to a certain degree like the T-64B. However, I think it still doesn't really fit the meta of War Thunder. The M1 Abrams is still better, and the M1 Abrams is your biggest ally. I have never fought an M1 Abrams. When I saw an M1 Abrams on the battlefield, it was always on my team, or none at all. And so I think it's the support that the tank gets that makes it playable, and every tank that you face you can take out with your stock shell. But I think some people expected an ultra deletion round to have access to with this tank and to just shoot every tank anywhere and to kill it, and others just expected to this tank to perform very poorly. Neither of those positions is true, and I want to show you in the stats, in the gameplay, how the truth, for me at least, looks. I've played the tank for quite some bit. It's now, after the Leopard 2K and also the T-64B, the third high tier tank that I will cover in a tank review of the new MBTs. However, I have to say it's the least enjoyable to play. It is too average for me. It's not bad, but too average, and certain parts of it really annoy me. And it's not necessarily the gaps in the armor. And when it comes to how the armor is arranged, it's surprisingly similar, but not that obvious, to the T-64B. So without further ado, now we begin with the tank review, and we'll begin with the armor. So the outer hull is, like with a lot of the new main battle tanks, not that thick. However, as you can see, the lower glacis is rather flat, and it's a big target, much like on the M1 Abrams. However, we'll see later on a big difference there. So just 70mm, and through this armor plate, Panzer IV F2 can shoot through, or a 76mm Sherman, or some higher versions of the T-34 with ease, no problem to shoot through that. The upper part is just 50mm thick, but at an interesting angle of 60 degrees. So I have bounced some rounds, especially when slightly angled, and you shouldn't rely on this because the side is thin, just 20mm, 38mm, typical main battle tank design. Turret side is just 25mm. The upper hull here is just 38mm, but it creates a lot of ricochets and bounces and shot traps here with the overhanging turret. More on this in a moment. So the rear of the tank with the hull is very thin, of 20mm, 25mm, so from the side and the rear we are highly vulnerable to SPAs even. And so is the top of the engine deck, just 8mm thick, and here 20mm thick, like the top of the turret, with certain parts being 60mm thick. So it's highly vulnerable to air attacks for flanking, but so is, for example, the T-64B. Not that extreme, but still. And at this battle rating, I don't think that the British have by default air superiority. This is at lower battle rating the case, but you really have no protection from aircraft because you just have two machine guns, one coaxial here, and here you have limited elevation, and the stopping power of this single 7.62mm L8A1 machine gun is not that impressive. So that's the tank from the front, the turret front, you know, 50mm, not that bad angled, but here you have a big cupola, you have this weak spot here, and you also have the surrounding of the gun, which has no additional armor plate. Everything goes through. And also this driver's hatch is a big, you know, shell catcher. And I think it's really the lower glacis and the driver's hatch with the area around the gun that is the weak spot, which is very similar to the armor layout on the T64B. The X-ray reveals that we have some composite armor, however, it's just here, and this, you know, protects you from 400mm against kinetic energy and 600 against chemical energy ammunition. How this really plays out in the test shooting, you should see at least now with a stat card to the left, or at the left, and this is the part where I shot. Because this part here, the, you know, more steeply angled one, created a lot of, you know, ricochets, and they went into the turret ring or penned right through or got stuck here on the underside of the turret front. And there is nothing to stop anything from penetrating the lower glacis. And as you can see, you know, there are some propellant charges, some warheads, a few crew members, nothing really important. So yeah, to be honest, if you get penetrated here, you cannot really angle, and you always catch a shell right into the ammunition, which explodes, you know, as reliable as the T64B. So lower glacis, big target. Driver's hatch, big target. Surrounding of the gun, big target, just cost too much in his armor. The turret front is strong, but not invincible, so I want to make this clear, despite here it being stated 470mm and 750mm against kinetic and chemical energy ammunition respectively. You know, I penetrated it, and I tested both sides, which you can also see in the stat card. So the tank has just simply big weak spots. I just wanted to point that out. And we have, well, 4 crew members. 2 of them are here on the left side of the tank, if you look at it from the front. We have, of course, the gunner and the commander, and on this side the loader, and the driver, of course, in the middle of the front. And the power package is here in the rear. We have some rather unprotected ammunition in the turret, the warheads are there, the propellant charges stored here right there. The most ammunition you should remove from your 52 rounds, you should at least, okay, I think 20 rounds are everything that you realistically need in a battle, and well, then you can remove the big portions here, which, sorry about this, helps sometimes. Power package in the rear, strong engine, good transmission, and we also see some fuel tanks and some additional armor on the side, to a certain degree, much like with the Leopard 2K. It's a bit trolley, but you should never really realistically rely on it. So slight angles if somebody shoots here, but most people just shoot here, hit the ammo, hit the engine, set you on fire, blow you up right away. So this is the Challenger, at least in the X-ray and the armor view. Not really that convincing, and bigger weak spots than the T64B. So let's move on to some other stats. For further stats, let's begin with the mobility of the tank, and while we have a okayish engine, we have much more horsepower to ton ratio than the predecessor, despite being heavier. So a 1200 horsepower engine compared to the 750 of the Chieftain Mk is just better. It's outright better. Acceleration, top speed, and also the reverse gear. It's so much better than the Chieftain Mk, which was just a bit too slow. Not just a bit, but way too slow. Then also the mobility, especially on slopes and when it comes to acceleration up a hill and so forth, it's pretty buggy. You have also the gear shifting bug, so it's not that good actually. But on flat terrain, the tank is surprisingly quick, and you actually can meet your top speed of 56 kilometers an hour. And sometimes you can, you know, reach the target area before your average opponent like the T64B or T64A, or even the Leopard 2K can reach them. And that is actually pretty surprising, and you can maneuver a little bit, but you're still feeling pretty heavy in certain situations. And it's just simply nothing like a Leopard 2K, KPZ-70, and M1 Abrams in the long run, which just are, lighter than you, have either better protection or something else going for them, and stronger engines. And they very often do not have that, gear shifting bug, especially the M1 Abrams, and they just turn around quicker. The Leopard 2K is comparable when it comes to turning, and I think what you really beat is the T64B, not just with horsepower to ton ratio, but also acceleration, maneuverability, backwards, neutral steering, and so forth. So it's not all doom and gloom, but don't think that you are like BRM in the 60s or 70s, whatever. You are okayish, kind of right in the middle. You are on the upper half of the lower end. This is the best description that I can give the tank. So yeah, definite upgrade compared to the Chieftain Mk. Let's have a look at the gun. Much like with the mobility, the firepower is also mediocre. We have a 120mm L11A5 gun that you share with the Chieftain Mk with 52 rounds in total, which is not bad, but you again should reduce it to 20-21 rounds. But you have a 0.8 seconds faster reload compared to your predecessor with 6.7 seconds, which is the same as the KPZ Leopard 2K. And yeah, with expert crew, you share the reload of 7.1 seconds with the autoloaders on the T64A and B. So you are comparable. But again, with an ace crew, you get it down to 6.7, which gives you a very slight advantage. And yeah, against your opponents, you then can beat them out or shoot them out. But again, to not get hit in the first place is the best thing that you can achieve. Turret rotation speed, 31 degrees per second. That beats out the Chieftain Mk, again your predecessor, and also the T64A and B by quite some bit. Up to 35% faster, but you cannot really compete with the KPZ-70, Leopard 2K, M1 Abrams. So again, you are on the upper half of the lower end. The gun depression and gun elevation are, shared with your predecessor, the KPZ-70 and M1 Abrams, with minus 10 degrees and 20 degrees. So your theoretical meta of going hull down is actually achievable in most situations. What is kind of a bit disappointing is the elevation speed when you are outside of the range of the stabilizer. 5.0 degrees per second is just slightly above average of normal tanks, but again, you are on top of the lower end in the comparison. You can see kind of a pattern emerging here, and you have nothing in comparison to the Leopard 2K, KPZ-70, M1 Abrams. So you're kind of not the worst, not the best, you're nothing fancy, special, overpowered, but you're definitely not the worst. Now let's begin to talk about the ammunition, and the tank has two stock shells. We begin with the shell L31, which is a hash shell. A bad muzzle velocity, and we have 152mm of penetration, which gets absorbed by spaced armor, bushes, trees, and also composite armor. You might splash some other tanks, but it's not really reliable. But against some lower tier vehicles you might still take a few with you, especially against SPAs, since you have no coaxial or turret mounted 20mm or even 50 caliber machine gun. So you need something to splash, something to hull break stuff. Your stock solid shot is the L15A5 APDS round, and it shares the muzzle velocity of 1370 meters per second with its predecessor shell, the L15A3, to be found on the Chieftain Mk 3, 5 and 10, which has 400 millimeters of raw penetration at 10 meters and 0 angles of attack. You have 412, so it's a light upgrade, but you still have APDS. So you have no positive normalization, so it doesn't dig into the armor, it bounces at extreme angles, it's not really that strong against composite armor. I will show you later on an accumulation of the ammunition. And well, I think it's doable to shoot at the lower glacis of a T-64B, to shoot the lower glacis and the turret front of a Leopard 2K, and those are your two main opponents. You don't have to deal with the M1 Abrams, as I said in the beginning, so it's doable. The first upgraded shell that we can find on the tank is the Shot L23 AP-FSDS as a tier 2 upgrade, and we actually, have a higher muzzle velocity of 1535 meters per second, so it's easier to aim, but our base pan sinks down. But the important stats here are against 60 degrees angle of attack, and we are actually increasing our penetration and also therefore the normalization of the shells to 192 millimeters. This is not bad and definitely an upgrade over the stock APDS round. But it's not really the very best shell. But again, you can deal better with the T-64B's lower glacis, it's easier to aim at, and it also has better post-penetration damage effect, although the post-penetration damage effect of the stock APDS is not that bad, to be honest. It's nothing like the bad L7 gun experience that I always have. So it's still an upgrade, but it's not, a complete new world that you open. It's not an I win button, and you still cannot shoot through the upper glacis of the T-64B, but the T-64A and also the turret front is still a tough nut to crack on both Soviet medium tanks or main battle tanks. As a tier 3 upgrade, we get the L34 smoke shell, and it's kind of usable, but you have 2 launches of smoke screen, which are more useful if your gun breech gets damaged or your gunner gets taken out. So yeah, it's usable but not your priority in terms of research. What is a good shell is the Shot L23A1. Again, we have a muzzle velocity of 1535 meters per second, a raw penetration power of 440 millimeters, and at 60 degrees of 206 millimeters. Now, this is a good solid shell, but again, it will not lull pan everything. You still have to aim for the lower glacis of the T-64B, but you shoot through the upper glacis of the T-64A, and through both turrets you have a good chance of going through, but it depends on the exact position where you shoot, and lower glacis is just the weakness not just of yourself but also of the T-64B. And the Leopard, you should not really have a weakness with it, just avoid to shoot at the upper glacis where you can still create a ricochet. Now, to really have a look at the base penetration and the normalization of it, despite not having a positive normalization, this shell has as much penetration as the stock shell of the T-64B. And immediately people cry, oh, Russian bias, but that is not the case. Despite the 3BM15 having also 440 millimeters, which is the stock shell of the T-64B, the penetration power at 60 degrees angles is 169 millimeters. So we have here much more by around about 40 millimeters at an angle of 60 degrees that you can penetrate, despite having lower muzzle velocity. I think this is just a simply better shell design, but it really becomes apparent if we compare it to the 3BM22 of the T-64B, which is its tier 4 upgrade, and you lose by raw penetration power because you have 440 millimeters, T-64B has 475. However, even with this big raw firepower or penetration power, you still don't have the normalization power at a 60 degrees angle of attack, which is 182 millimeters. And that is even lower than your tier 2 shell, and this just should give you an impression how good the British shells excel at dealing with angled armor. But again, it depends what you shoot at, and this is where this sheet comes here in. So those are the results from the test shooting, again at a distance of 300 meters at perfectly non-angled situations on flat terrain. And while the data sheets against the M1 Abrams is more or less cosmetical, because you will most likely not face it in the near future on the battlefields, we can see that with no shell type we had any difficulties of the APDS or APFSDS fraction to go through the lower glacis of the M1 Abrams. And against the T64B you have a harder time, even with the tier 4 upgrade, the L23A5. So don't shoot just simply at the strongest point of the enemy tank. Aim for weak spots and you can mostly take them out even with your stock ammunition. So this reduces the stress of the stock grind a lot. But I have to point out one thing. Your stabilizer stops working at around about 30 to 35 kilometers an hour, and then it just goes wild. It seems like it's the same stabilizer from the Chieftain Mk, on which it worked more or less perfectly fine. But with the higher speed of the Challenger 1, the same system can't keep up with the movement of the tank at higher speeds. So just don't break down completely, just slow down a little bit, where then the stabilizer works again, and you still can pull off those precision shots on the move. But always think that the relative movement still gets transferred to the shell. So with that in mind, I hope I gave you a good impression of what the tank can do. So let's briefly sum up the tank. The armor is not really convincing, while it has some strong points. The wish thinking that you are invulnerable when you're hull down is just with wish thinking, especially if you have to push an objective, if you have to push the enemy because you're about to lose due to your objective, or somebody is around the corner and you want to help an ally. You are just a literal glass cannon, but you're not an extremely powerful cannon. You are competitive but not extremely powerful. I think this privilege goes to the T64B in my opinion. And also the rate of fire goes to the M1 Abrams. Your speed and maneuverability you lose to the M1 Abrams, the KPZ Leopard 2K, and also the KPZ/MBT-70. But you are not really a slouch. You are a definite upgrade compared to your predecessor, the Chieftain Mk, and so you should treat the tank. It's capable, but nothing really magic. And if you are hull down and you have a perfect position, it's useless if the enemy tanks don't line up, if they avoid your position, if they flank you. And this is where the dangerous wish thinking of certain people come in. If it's a useless position, it's useless. It's nice, but useless, because the situation that the tank is designed for, where enemy hordes of enemy tanks just push you and you snap them one by one at long ranges over open field, and there are many tanks to support you and you just have time to repair and so forth. That situation is not given in War Thunder, so it's the least enjoyable tank to play, not the least capable. So I hope I gave you a good impression. Now let's have a look at the gameplay. So now I want to show you the perfect situation that every Challenger driver really dreams of. And in the previous footage you could see the advantage in terms of mobility, and we go right for the middle of the map and we meet, or intercept rather, T-64s. Now this one is the first kill, the second one behind it, he cannot really reverse. The big weakness of the Russians, aim for the lower glacis, and we have our second kill. And we already move in to secure the capture zone. And now we have this weak spot, because if somebody would come around the corner, he could shoot our weak side. Now from across the river, if somebody goes around the hill to our right or to the left, if my team doesn't pay attention, because they take their sweet time to move up. So I've captured the point, and now I retreat and I move around and I begin to flank. This is very aggressive, and the enemy team allows me to do so. They don't secure the flank and I somewhat flanked them. I've intercepted two of their most powerful tanks and shot them with ease. I could have killed them also with the stock shell where I aimed, so just to make no mistake here. Again, I talked about it when it came to the vulnerability of the T-64B, which is very similar to the T-64A. good tank, but the lower glacis is a deadly weak spot. Like with your tank, make no mistake, I just don't show here a compilation of the 11 out of 10 penetrations that, you know, the lower glacis of this tank. And then we have another candidate, and he tries to make some fancy gameplay. And just in a second, yeah, there it is, he smokes up and he wants to actually move across. I see a little bit of smoke here. I shoot here with the machine gun, see him. Where it is again, there it is. I saw the smoke, he bounced on my composite armor, he didn't shoot properly, and I one-shot him by shooting, I guess, right under the middle of the tank where the big ammunition carousel sits, and I blow him up. Very, very reliable. So again, T64, B and A, there are no bias tanks. There are proper tanks, there are good tanks, and they have the weakness, and I think it's fine and fun to fight against them and with them. And it's fun to just one-shot enemy tanks that don't pay attention, third kill, just like that. And that is really, really fun. So, nice. And now I want to present you the best battle that I had so far in terms of kills. And it is on Berlin. So again, we have a very nice gentleman, you know, giving our tank a message from behind with very, very skillful machine gunning here. Big shout out to you, sir. You made it to YouTube. I have no idea who you are. So may you stay anonymous for the rest of the time. I think it's better for all of us. This is an issue that I just not had in the, you know, Challenger 1. If you want to say hello to me, write it in chat, I answer you. But don't give my position away to the enemy team. They see the sparks, they see the smoke, they see the tracers, and they may not see my tank, but if they follow the tracers, I just give a big target away. And this is annoying, and you don't want it to happen to you as well. So, some nice camera work here by Gaijin, just under the bridge, and we move together with some MBT-70s here into the middle of the map, and we kind of observe where the enemy is going. So I'm playing again very aggressive. I don't want to stay back, but you can see the gun depression is not always the best, but we actually hit an IT-1 where it hurts. He can, at the moment, at least not fire the rocket. That gives me the you know, possibility to fly, this is not a Spitfire, to move over the hill, and you saw how painful it is to maneuver with the tank despite this tank being fully upgraded. So avoid slopes if possible, because you don't maneuver on them very well. You cannot really react to changes, and yeah, that was a missed shot by me, and a reverse. And this is a big, big benefit over the Chieftain Mk 10, the reverse gear. This is not side scraping, but I wanted to confuse him a little bit, and we get a nice side shot, finishing him off. T64A, T64B, it doesn't really matter. They explode very, very reliable. So if you have a good shot at them, it's rewarding. Which I cannot say about some other Soviet tanks at rank 5. When I meet them with some other nation's tanks. Nevertheless, let's move on. And you can see, I thought to myself, what about to clear the flank? Well, T64A just vanished. He didn't pay attention, and I just looked at the right position at the right moment. And what to do now? Now a standoff, this is where the tank is vulnerable. The side is paper against APDS, APFSDS, hell, even a lot of normal solid shots would go through, and you know, it's just paper. So, we have secured us some nice shells. Let's move on and let's see what we can do. At this point, the matches are small. You suffer by having long queue times, despite there being some tanks in the queue on your side, but it seems like there are not enough Soviet and or German tanks to fill the queue time for the combination of British and American tanks that get spammed out. And there is another tank, and I just hit it. Hull break here, the Shilka. Yeah, that was a kind of a little bit spawn camping, but at this point in the battle, well, the enemy teams just went through each other. You can see there is some action on our spawn, and we have to repel them with fighting at their spawn. High tiers is far from fair gameplay. It's far from, honor and so forth. And yeah, another hull break here on the ZSU 57-2. If he would have shot at my side, he would have one-shot at me probably. I receive a shot in the back. I'm not quite sure what it is. I don't want to see it. Object 906, I guess. So I have to repair. My gun is back up. The turret ring repairs in 7 seconds. That's really nice for me. Good crew. But I'm down to just 2 crew members. And this is now where the big difference to the autoloaders comes in. Compared to the T64A, T64B, MBT/KPZ-70. And again, look at that disastrous hill, that we had to climb. It's just no good. It's just no good. And yeah, I see him in the river. He probably doesn't see me. And again, a nice crew knockout this time. I'm not quite sure if I would have hull broken him. In this patch, Object 906, you got hull break like you deserve it. I think the RE251 got it now as well, but justice for everybody, I guess. So we move in, and there is another tank, and he actually sees me. And I'm not quite sure if I could shoot through it. And now let's pull off some smoke shenanigans. And this will be a funny battle. I tried to trick him into thinking that I have shot with the machine gun, but he is a smart Soviet player. And I cannot really make use out of his bad reverse gear here. And I have no sign in the smoke. I want to flank him. And I want to listen to where he's going. And I get stuck. Yeah. So, we have equal chance. And there is another tank that I just saw whizzing by. So he's not there anymore. And I have to just exit the situation and move another angle of attack. Maybe go out of the hearing distance and intercept the other tank. If I can intercept him. Nope. He was too fast. He has chosen another route. So let's move on. And I cannot really go for a second shot. So the M1 Abrams is behind me, and he has taken on the T64. Let's see if we can help. And yes, we have a shot at him. Good stuff. 6th kill. Now, is this now spawn camping? Is this spawn pushing? It doesn't really matter. It's dirty, filthy gameplay. And now you can see the long reload with just 2 crew members. Oh, yeah. That was kind of luck that this guy didn't have a stabilizer. He just could have shot me right through the driver's hatch, or just disabled my gun breach area. He has enough penetration. And that was my most successful gameplay in terms of kills. So I hope you saw enough gameplay in terms of what to do with the tank, what not to do to the tank, its strength and weaknesses, the statistics of the tank, and that it surely is not the worst, but also not the best out there. So yeah, the M1 Abrams is the tank that helps you win a lot of games. It's the spearhead. You are the support tank. You're not as fast, you don't have the overall armor, you don't have the rate of fire, nor the survivability of the M1 Abrams, and I think that's interesting. So I get here now attacked by a plane. I cannot really defend myself. While having not disastrous turret rotation speed, I just don't have the firepower. If I don't hit the enemy with the main cannon, preferably with Hesh, I rarely ever shot down an aircraft. So, doesn't really matter. Let's have a quick look at the post-battle results. Let's see what we achieved, or what we got for our achievements of 7 kills. So, I got, nearly 40,000 silver lines and 4,205 research points, which is a nice, income. I also got the Survivor Award, so I think it was worth showing it. I also showed you a lot of other, nice battles and scenes, and I also was first in team with over 700 score points. So this is the Challenger 1. I think it's far from being useless, but it's also not magic. Again, it's kind of right in the middle. In my opinion, the tank is not as fun as the Leopard 2K, it's not as reliable as the M1 Abrams, and it's not as strong when it comes to the raw firepower penetration of the T-64B, which are all tanks that I would play instead. And I think you have reached a peak with the Chieftain Mk 3 in my opinion at 8.0. So let me know what you think about this tank review, your experience playing the tank, playing against it. Do you think that my judgment here on the tank's verdict is right or wrong? What would you give the tank to improve it, or do you think it's right where it needs to be? Anyways, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, give this video a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see each other in the skies and on the battlefields of War Thunder.